listening to the Reckless Takes Podcast, covering sports, lifestyle, and nearly everything in between. Buckle up, boys and girls. It's time to get reckless.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by freezersports.com. Whether you are a new or experienced sports gambler, if you have not used a consultant site, you are missing out. Freezersports.com utilizes advanced machine learning technology to predict sporting events and find you value lines. Visit the website today, that's freezersports.com, to view their predictions from their NHL, NBA, and MLB models, all for free. Yes, for free. Freezersports.com.
Shut up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Reckless Takes Podcast. I am your host, Kyle. No Randy this week. He's either working or he's I don't know, crying because Taysom Hill is his quarterback and the Rockets haven't won a game since like December. But I'm joined by a couple of very special guests. Steven is back with us again, the most handsome podcast guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm trying to get my beard like yours.
You can only hope. And then first-time guest, longtime friend, Taylor's here with us.
What did you say about Taysom Hill?
I said Randy is probably at home crying because Taysom Hill is his quarterback.
Hey, he's the starter of the future, man.
When he throws 1,000 yards, we can call him the future. How about that?
Who's a bigger Saints fan, the Giblet or Taylor?
I have a shirt.
I don't know. I mean, I have to say,
Kyle bought me, actually.
I have to say Taylor only because, like, I've witnessed, like, we've gone days where we don't talk to each other because the Cowboys lost to the Saints. Like, I've, like, witnessed, like, that rivalry. Like, there was one time, and it was, like, a shitstorm because I had to work. I was working overnights at the time, so I was already grumpy because I had to go into work at, like, 10 p.m. And then the Cowboys lost to the Saints. And I was, like, I was going to go take a nap before work. And I told Taylor, I like snatched the remote from the chair and turned the volume like all the way down the TV. And he was like, "What the fuck, man? Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm watching this shit." And I was like, "Well, I'm fucking taking a nap." And we like got in this whole fight. And then we like texting each other like in separate rooms, like apologizing and shit, like a couple of little wussies.
Was that the season? Was that the season that the Saints beat the Cowboys like 9-7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the 20 seasons in a row when the Cowboys went 9-7. So today's podcast, we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be like a bonus pod. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time now. We're going to do a entirely Spurs focused podcast. So we're going to be covering basically the entire Spurs dynasty, going back to essentially when Duncan was drafted all the way to present. We're going to cover like the best moments, the worst moments, and where we go from here. Before we get into it, I want to ask you guys, do you have a specific moment? Obviously, we were all raised in San Antonio, I believe, right? Steven, you're raised in San Antonio as well, right?
Yeah, born and raised.
Okay. So we were all raised here. So do you guys have a specific moment that you can remember that you realized you became a Spurs fan? Or was it just kind of like always known?
For me, that first championship, I mean, I will never forget. I was, a kid, 8 or 9, and watching it at my buddy's house. All of the kids played together in sports. All the dads are in the living room. I was at my coach's house. There's probably 30 people there watching the Spurs win the championship, going crazy, partying like it was New Year's Eve. I mean, unreal. And from that minute on, you're kind of just hooked. You know, people need to remember San Antonio, Spurs are everything. We don't have baseball. We don't have football. The Spurs are the Spurs in San Antonio. So for me, that first championship, I remember feeling like, man, this is huge. I mean, everybody felt like this was just it. So after that, it was, you're hooked.
Yeah, for me, I mean, so Steve's a little bit older than us, so I wasn't really like aware of the Spurs, the 99 championship. But for me, it actually was the 2003 championship was when I first realized that like how embedded the Spurs were in not only San Antonio and its culture, but like our family and our family dynamic. Like it wasn't until I remember the 03 finals, they beat New Jersey, that like I had been watching the Spurs for for years. I just without realizing it. And the '03 championship they won on Father's Day, and I remember watching it with my father and my grandpa in like all together, and that was a really cool moment. That's my first like memory of the Spurs, essentially.
Yeah, mine. So I remember my first like real vivid Spurs moment was in 2005 in the finals, and I was about 7 years old. But that was my real moment where I realized like how big of a fan I was. That's when I realized how big of a thing that was happening. But I really locked in for the 2007 season. So I was 9 years old, I guess, and that was the first year that I actually like watched every single game that I could. And when they won the finals that year, I remember going around driving, honking, and going to academy, getting the T-shirts, and that was when I really locked in. But my first memories are a little bit earlier than that. So I don't even know where to start. So let's start off with, we're recording this April 23rd at 10 o'clock. So just so if we have any really crazy outdated takes, that's why. The Spurs just won their, let's see here, their 29th game. So they're 29-29. Dead even, they are 9th in the West. So fighting for that play-in spot. But that being said, let's go back a little bit. I want to start with a favorite moment. Obviously, if your favorite moment is that first moment that you have, that's fine. Do you guys have a favorite early Dynasty moment?
As a kid, for me, I remember the first time Stack Jack kind of started getting fame. And as a kid who, used to play basketball till 1 or 2 in the morning, always seeing the Spurs, prim and proper. When this guy started coming in with his attitude and with his swagger, I just remember thinking feeling instantly connected to him. And so when we're in the playing the Mavericks what year was it? And Kerr is hitting 3 after 3 after 3. And you're seeing Stack Jack go crazy. You're seeing all these guys go crazy. I remember it was feeling some sort of connection to Steven Jackson and that playoff run and Kerr hitting those threes. Those are memories that for whatever reason just really stick with me. This guy was,
from that point on, did you kind of tell yourself like I'm going to be an asshole for the rest of my life? Like just kind of model after him.
That's
Modeled
what it
his
is.
Whole life after Steven Jackson.
Those are some bad life choices, but I mean, it was just him and Kerr. I don't know what it was. Kerr was too old. He had that. I don't know if y'all remember that big old knee brace, and we're losing to the Mavericks, and then he's just hitting clutch shot after clutch shot. Then you have this guy who doesn't fit into the Spurs way, who is a vital part to a few playoff runs. Those are some big, playoff moments for me.
Cool, man.
Yeah, and for me, so that '03 championship, that was like my first early Dynasty moment, like my favorite one. Just not because of like obviously winning the championship, but like who I was with, my family, that sort of recognition that like this was bigger than like maybe just a team winning a regular championship. Like this team is embedded with the city and everyone loves this team. But I'm going to go with the 2005 playoff run. That's my favorite one of the early teams, just because that was the first playoff run I remember watching the whole thing. And like from first round to finals, just because of what had happened the year before against the Lakers with the Derek Fisher buzzer beater. And, I remember watching that, and we get back into the playoffs, and it's like, all right, I'm here for it. I want to watch every single minute of every single game. And, they beat the Nuggets, Seattle. God, I don't remember the Western Conference Finals team, but then of course they beat Detroit in the finals, and all of that is my favorite moment.
If you're talking the lowest of lows, it's Derek Fisher.
Yeah. What's even more frustrating is
not for me.
Flashing forward that it's now been proven humanly impossible to catch the ball, turn around and shoot with 0.4 seconds left. Even as fast as he did it, it was strictly human error, and it's literally impossible to do.
What's
I,
what's frustrating about what's frustrating about that is human error at home is just unacceptable. And also, I think that and I'll ask you guys this: what hurt the most, that 2004 Derek Fisher shot, which again I was only 9 years old, or the
Or the
2013
yeah.
Ray Allen shot? And I got to go 2013. You know, I'm
For
17
me, it's
years
that
old,
I
and
wasn't old
we're in
enough
the
to care.
finals. We're 1.5 seconds away from winning the championship. Like, we might not have won that. We might not have won that series in LA.
And the wizard Greg Popovich is the reason that even happened in the first place. You know, taking out Tim. That's easily my lowest moment as a Spurs fan, because I was 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old when the Derek Fisher shot happened. So I don't even remember it. But that 2013 finals, like, I cared a lot about that team, and for it to happen like that was easily my least favorite moment. My favorite moment though is also that moment I talked about in 2005 where I first remember it happening, and I wasn't super locked in, but I remember I was in South Padre. I don't know if I already mentioned that. I was in South Padre with my family just on a little vacation, and I was at this random bar and grill there, and it was, you know, we're 2 or 3 hours away, however far it is, from San Antonio, and it was like the entire city stopped for game 5 of that finals, and which kind of shows you how big of a thing it was, not just in San Antonio but in Texas. And that was the Robert Horry game 5 where, you know, he shut down the entire fourth quarter and just took over. So that was my favorite early moment. But
there's a few memories that are just ingrained into my mind. It's Fisher, it's the Ray Allen shot. I don't know if you guys remember, that was game 6. Mm-hmm. That was a closeout game for us. That was game 6. I remember being heartbroken, but thinking, we got this. We have one more game. Game 7, coming down to the wire. Timmy goes to the bucket, has a little drop, misses it, has his jersey over his head. I have that ingrained in my mind. And then him walking off the court for the final time, when he never announced it in typical Timmy fashion. He did not have this tour, his final season, where he wanted recognition. But as a San Antonio fan, you knew you had just seen one of the greatest players ever to walk off.
The Thunder
OKC,
series, right?
Yeah. OKC. And he looks back, he holds his hand up, and you knew that was it. And those are a couple that are just ingrained in my mind.
Yeah, man. That 2016 one, or the 2013 one, like that game 7. I remember the game 7 super vividly, and I remember LeBron hit like 2 daggers. There was like 2 consecutive daggers that he hit, and yeah, those hurt because I remember
right at the elbow.
Yep, I remember just like you, like they lost game 6, but I was like, we should have won that game. There's no reason we should have lost that game. So why shouldn't I be confident going to game 7? And like, I should have known that. After that, there was no way. After that,
as soon as they lost game 6, I was like, dang, like, we're not going to win game 7. Like, you don't, like, history has shown, like, you don't win a game. You don't win the series after losing a game like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why history remembers all these great moments. Like, if we win game 7, people don't really talk about the Ray Allen shot as much, right? Just because it ended up not mattering in the long run. It was a cool shot, but
everything about that shot was insane. Like the fact that everyone had left the stadium and they roped off the court. They brought the trophy out. Like they were ready to hand the trophy over, and Ray Allen just decided it wasn't going to happen.
Man, quick story. I was in Denver for work for a month during that series, and I'm the only dude from San Antonio, and I'm wearing Spurs shirts to work, and we're about to close out. Let's all go to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch game 6 together. So we're there, and the whole game, I'm the only one that's hyped, ready to go. And in a meme on a commercial, Ray Allen hits that shot, and everybody in the restaurant is screaming, and I'm the only one sitting down with my hands over my face in shock.
Just one tear.
In shock. Game 6 ends. Game 7. Where are we going? I watched the whole game 7 on the edge of my hotel bed, this far away from the TV. And man, some of the saddest times, man, seeing the Spurs go out like that.
Hey, so was it this is one of my other random favorite moments. This is later in the dynasty, which is going to lead me to my next favorite late dynasty moment. But was it 2013 that we had the game where Tony Parker hit the game winner from his knee? That was 2013, right?
Game 1 of 2013.
Yeah, that game. I remember that game super vividly, and I remember Chris Bosh had a really good game, and it was that game specifically was like some of the 2 or 3 guys were going at it, as opposed to like Timmy and LeBron going at it. Manu had a good game, Tony had a good game, Chris Bosh had a good game, and yeah, Tony had no business even getting that shot off, falling to his knee, dribbling it like an and one mixtape, and then hitting that shot. I remember that one super vivid. That was a really good memory as well. But I want to talk about one moment that this kind of just came to we started talking about Steven Jackson, because I believe that the Steven Jackson season where he came back was the same season as this memory. If I'm wrong, correct me. But the you guys remember the "I Want Some Nasty" thing?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And that was the Steven Jackson year, right? Because that was the OKC. Was that the one where we lost when we went up 2-0 and then lost the series? Was he there for that?
Yeah, that would be 2012. Yeah.
I don't. Okay, so yeah, so all I remember the "I Want Some Nasty" thing was awesome, because the Spurs were, we're 12 years in, or 14 years into this whole dynasty, and so things are obviously on the down end, but we're still a good team. We're just lacking this identity. We're just like on this like straight line of being good, and we don't have any feistiness to us. And so Pop says that quote in the timeout huddle. He's like, "I want some nasty," and everyone, it goes viral. They make T-shirts, and then like, I think that was when they had come back 2-2 after going up 2-0. And so like I ordered the T-shirt. This was one of the worst. This is one of my favorite. Him saying that was my favorite moments, but one of my worst moments was the T-shirt came in the mail, and I had gone to get it during Game 6 with like 3 minutes left. I like ran to the mailbox to go get it, came back, put my shirt on, all excited, and then they lose the series. And it was like, and it was just like terrible moment, because there was kind of this feeling that this might be one of the last few chances for the Spurs to get there. And that ended up not being true, because we went back 2 years in a row after that. But do y'all have any, if y'all haven't said already, any favorite late dynasty moments?
For me, it was that 14 finals. Everything surrounding it. There was the coming off of the 13 loss, how heartbreaking that was. Going through that summer and fall, like remembering it. We get back and you can tell that it's the same team essentially. And they're just destroying everybody as they play. We get all the way to the playoffs, and then for some reason or another, we go to 7 with Dallas because we're playing Dallas, and that they finally beat Dallas in 7, cruised to the finals after that, and then like one of the most like the things I'll never forget is that Manu dunk when in Game 5 when you just
he
knew,
brushes off Ray Allen.
Yeah, you just knew, okay, like we're gonna do it today, right? Like
when he dunked on Chris Bosh, was it that one?
Yeah, like this is it. Like, and then Tim shoves Manu's head, and like everyone's going crazy. That little run in Game 5 where no one can miss a 3.
Yeah.
And God, I get chills. I downloaded that game and watched it, I think last year, and like it's just a great moment. Like to remember.
Talk about a complete annihilation of a team. That should have been a 4-0 series. They took the will of the Heat. They took, beautiful basketball, passing, ball movement, team chemistry, redemption. It had everything that you needed coming off such a heartbreaking loss. It's made for the movies. They go down and defeat the way they did. A historic shot by Ray Allen. Historic. One of the all-time most clutch shots ever in a finals, to come back the way they did and not just beat the team they lost to, completely destroy the team, broke up the big 3 in Miami. It was just incredible the way they came back.
Yeah. So unless you guys have any other late dynasty moments, one of my favorite things when you talk Spurs is talking about the unsung heroes, the players that kind of go under the radar. That's whenever someone talks about favorite players of the Spurs. Obviously, Manu, Tim, and Tony are always going to be up there because they carried us through the whole thing. But first of all, I want to hear you guys when I talk about my favorite players. They're going to be like a little bit more lesser known. Do you guys have any of those lesser known favorite players?
Well, so you gave us this question a couple days ago, and I put it in the back of my head, just like thinking about it when I can, and so I came up with a couple like, as far as lesser known. I was trying to stem away from either their jersey was retired or they're going to be in the Hall of Fame, right? So that eliminates like people I had like Steve Kerr, Hall of Famer, Robert Ory is going to be in the Hall of Fame if he's not already. I'm not really sure. Haven't kept up with him that much. Brent Barry is a name that crossed my mind a couple times.
He's not in Tony Parker's top 5.
Yeah, he's not in Tony Parker's top 5. That was the reason why I wasn't going to say him. And so I came up with 2 interesting ones. I said Gary Neal. Gary Neal was always like a family favorite. It was kind of weird. There was that 2011 buzzer beater against the Grizzlies that, if we talk about buzzer beaters that don't matter, like that one was one.
Yeah.
Like, saved the season and we lost the next game.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put Bill Land as one of my forgotten heroes or like lesser known. Like he's been the voice of the Spurs for as long as I can remember. And you don't put Sean Elliott up there because obviously he has not been forgotten with the Miracle Day Miracle. The Memorial Day Miracle. And obviously he's still a broadcaster. But Bill Land, like all of his like catchphrases and I don't know his name, but the guy who does the radio calls.
Yeah.
If you listen to him on the radio, like those 2 have just been like those are my 2. And I know that's not what you were really looking for.
No, I mean that's awesome
when you were talking about that, but like that's just what I came up with.
Yeah, that's cool because and the more I see about them on Twitter, it's more negative things than not. Like as far as league pass goes, people that don't live here, they don't love listening to them call games. And it's a lot of bad talk about them. But my God, like when there's a national, it doesn't happen very often anymore. When there were national televised games from the Spurs, I was actively wanting to listen to Bill and Sean. And like I was willing to downgrade the quality of the broadcast to hear them call the game. I love it. And obviously it's biased. You're listening to a former Spurs player talk about the Spurs. And that's why I was like, I don't feel like listening to Marv Albert talk about how bad the Spurs stats are this year. I want to have Sean Elliott tell me after every dead ball, like, oh, we don't need to see that one again. Every time like a ball goes out on the Spurs, like, well, no, don't play that one again. No, those are cool picks though.
For me, I would always watch the nationally televised games on like the national networks, mostly because I wanted to see what ridiculous thing Jeff Van Gundy was going to say to Mark Jackson about the Spurs. You know, like this Tim Duncan, he's really old, and like Mark Jackson would just say one of his catchphrases, and then they'd move on.
With all due respect, this team is past its prime.
Yeah, exactly.
Steven, what about you?
Yeah, I already said Stack Jack was one of my favorites. Against the grain, did not fit into what the Spurs were historically about. Again, I think Taylor pointed I'm a couple years older than you guys, but 2 of the ones that I remember being fan favorites were Malik Rose, somebody who did not look like a basketball player, looked like he had no business being out there, but was just all heart, would hustle his ass off, get rebounds, do the dirty work. And for whatever reason, I just remember that big old smile. He had braces. I mean, San Antonio just loved them some Malik Rose. Mario Ellie. I don't know if y'all remember Mario Ellie, kind of the original like Gary Neal, Patty Mills, just like a 3-point specialist. I remember him being a little bit older, but just really clutch. And I know Sean Elliott has his number retired, but man, I don't know if y'all remember, guy had a kidney transplant. I mean, was really sick for a little while. I remember the city just kind of rallying around him, loving him. He's just kind of been a Mr. Spur to me. I know he's more of a famous one, but He's always been like a Mr. Spur to me.
Yeah. So I know, Taylor, you said, and this is with good reason, Robert Horry isn't like a lesser known NBA figure, but I feel like in 10 years when we're talking about the dynasty, I don't feel like people are going to bring up Robert Horry, you know, and I, you know, I was going back looking through some of the rosters, and I come across Robert Horry's name, and I would go back to that, like I already mentioned, the game 5 where he hit that series could have gone completely different had Robert Horry not taken over that quarter, because I remember he hit the 3 at the end of the third and time expired, and then he scores 18 straight, or he scores 18 of his 21 points rather in the fourth quarter, and like he single-handedly carried the Spurs. And could someone else have done that? Maybe, but you know, he has the proof that he did it.
Well, how
And,
about this? How about when he checks Steve Nash into the
that changes
sidelines?
that changes that series completely.
Changes the whole series.
Chain of
Suns
events.
probably win that series.
Chain of events. They come off the bench. Back then, if you stepped onto the court, you're suspended.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a big play also, man. I'll
That
never
was
forget him
huge.
checking him.
Yeah, and
Checking Steve Nash.
and so I love that the Spurs got a little piece of the big shot Rob thing, and so that was great. Another one of my favorites. I've probably told this to Taylor before. So Roger Mason, I know you guys remember him.
Oh, God, I was telling Cassie he's gonna say, I forget his name, but he's something the third.
Yeah,
and I could not think of the name.
Yeah, so Roger Mason, he might be number one on this list for me of guys other than the big 3 as far as the favorites. I remember he was there for a couple of years, but the second year I believe he was there, Manu and Tony both went down with ankle injuries, and Manu played something like 40 games, Tony played something like 50. And so that's the kind of season where the Spurs were probably going to break their 50 game winning streak and all that. But Roger Mason just out of nowhere, like he'd averaged like 5 points at the most coming into that season. He hit like 8 game winners that season. You can go on YouTube right now and look up Roger Mason buzzer beaters, and there's like a 10-minute compilation of him just that season hitting game winners. And I remember I changed my shooting form that season and shot from the side of the head after him.
God.
But you still missed, right?
Oh yeah, I was like, I'm gonna miss anyway. Might as well shoot from the side of the head, right? It was either him or Matt Bonner, and I was like, Matt Bonner's shot doesn't look so good coming off the dribble. Yeah. So Roger Mason, Robert Horry, and then another one is DeJuan Blair, and I know that this one doesn't come off as good after the fact because of the whole thing with him like stepping on Tiago Splitter's head afterward. But man, DeJuan Blair was awesome. I remember he had no ACLs. I don't know how that's possible. I've never like looked into the science of it or read an article about it, but he played a career in the NBA with no ACLs. He was like 6'8" or 6'9", but played like 7'3". And I remember he went to the rookie sophomore game and went like 25 and 25, and that kind of put him on the map. And I remember the last play of the game, he missed like 3 field goals and got 3 straight rebounds, and was just like racking up his stats for that. But I loved watching him play, and he was another one of those guys, just like Roger Mason, that comes onto the Spurs and makes a name for themselves, leaves, and then averages like 2 points and never does anything. And so, you know, I'm sure that happens with every team. They have guys that come in and out and don't do anything, but it always felt like a Spurs thing where we find out how to utilize these guys. And then,
hey, for me, the first one was, I don't know if y'all remember Derek Anderson. Again, a little bit back in the day, but godly, I will not forget loving and then hating him when he did not want to sign an extension, wanted more money, ended up going to Portland and it didn't work out. The same thing a couple years ago with Simmons. He has a huge season with us, wants to chase that bag, get a big bag.
He got the bag.
In Orlando, I think he's in the G League now. I mean, it just seems like, I know you're right. It seems like all teams do it, but it's always like with the Spurs. You go somewhere else and they just don't find the same success.
Yeah, man, Jonathan Simmons was so much fun to watch.
I love
Philly. Yeah, he went to Orlando and then to Philly, and I don't even know. I guess he's in the G League now. If that's correct. Yeah, he was really fun to watch. There's a bunch of guys that like they come on and they look like they have like promises role playing talent, but they never do it. Like Brandon Paul, I've been watching him. a couple years ago. He was like the 7th or 8th man off the bench for the Spurs, and he like I thought he looked really promising, and Pop made him look good, and then he hasn't played in the NBA since. Like I think he's been overseas every single season since. So okay, really quick, does anyone come to mind when you guys? There's probably only one name that you can think of, someone that it was the other way around. They were really good, they were really talented, and they come in to the Spurs, and it doesn't work out whatsoever. Is there more than one name that comes to mind?
Besides Rodman?
Besides Rodman, that was not who I was thinking of. Rodman, I think that honestly, I mean, you're right. It didn't work out, but I think we kind of knew what we were getting with Rodman. And, I don't remember obviously, but looking back on it, Steven, does anyone come to your mind?
Are you talking about LaMarcus?
No, I'm a huge
DeMar, right?
No, also not DeMar. Although I'm ready to move on.
Oh, I know.
It's Richard Jefferson.
Richard Jefferson. Yeah. Dang, I wanted to say it.
He's the all-time black sheep, though. All-time black sheep.
Yeah.
That was. I remember thinking that I was like, wow, we just extended our window by like 3 years because he looked so talented with Jason Kidd just giving him the ball wherever he wanted, right? And I love Tony Parker. Everyone loves Tony Parker, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but he could not set you up the way Jason Kidd could, straight up. And that combined with the athleticism waning down, but that Richard Jefferson season was so frustrating.
If you hear interviews with him now, or if he's on the jump, I love hearing him talk about his Spurs days and how much Pop hated him and how he just didn't fit in. But
he hated the city.
Agree.
The city hated him.
Uber athletic, so much promise, and just huge contract, and just never worked out.
And then we got him through the Bruce Bowen trade, right? Where we traded Bruce Bowen to the Bucks, I believe.
Yeah, then he retired,
and then Bruce Bowen retired. And I don't know if that was I was like not locked in enough, and Twitter wasn't a thing to where like we could know the details. I don't know if the Bucks knew that, or they were like, "Wait, he what?" we thought we were getting Bruce Bowen back, or if that was like already agreed upon. But God, speaking of Bruce Bowen, this is gonna lead me into another topic I want to ask, kind of off the script. But Bruce Bowen is another guy who's like very interactive with the San Antonio community still.
Oh yeah, he's a coach. He's a high school coach.
Yeah, high school coach.
He does a lot of charity work. Yes,
and he's always sitting outside of a Cracker Barrel. I don't know if you guys heard that story.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
There was all this stuff about him that came out, and I love him. I don't want to talk bad about him, of course, but like that he was going through financial struggles, and like was losing his house and all this and that, but while all that was happening, he was still like outside of a Cracker Barrel every weekend, and people were like hearing awful things about him, and they were like, yeah, he was outside a Cracker Barrel at like 8 a.m. And so like I don't know what was going on there. That's gonna lead me into do you guys have any experiences meeting Spurs players?
Oh yeah. So
Give me one.
I was waiting for you to ask, but I was fortunate enough growing up. My buddy, his dad was one of the doctors for the Spurs, and so it was a consistent thing where he would kind of rotate. My friend would rotate which friend he was taking to the game, and these seats were lower level seats, right there by the court. And we would get to go into the locker room after, get to go hang out under the tunnel after. I got to meet all the Spurs. I have a ticket signed by Tim Duncan and David Robinson. I mean, and I'm a kid, right? I'm in middle school. I'm 12 years old, and these 7-foot guys look like they're on stilts when you're this small kid, and they're just, when they say larger than life, it really, you're looking at your superhero and they are ginormous. I mean, you just can't describe it as a kid. Being in shock, being in awe, they leave, to them, you're just another kid, but
yeah,
it's just, just means the world to you.
What about you, Taylor? You got any?
Yeah, I have a very specific moment, and it actually brings me back to what you said about, forgotten heroes. Boris Diaw.
Oh God! If I have to hear a story one more time.
Yeah, so I won't tell the whole story, but basically,
no, please do.
Yeah, well, my mom's friend's husband was French. And there's not a lot of French people in San Antonio, but this was a pretty well-off French
I'm just
person.
imagining that like this random guy told you he was Boris Diaw, and you were like, yeah, and so
Yeah,
it was Boris Diaw.
yeah. Well, actually, that is not what happened. But I show up to this dinner that my mom invited me to, and Boris Diaw is sitting at the table. He's wearing like a Nike T-shirt. This is not Chili's, okay? This is like we're at a nice restaurant. Everyone's wearing a suit and tie, except for Boris Diaw. His homeboy just got back from the gym. He's wearing like basketball shorts, and he was so nice. He's a really good person. He was filming a documentary, and he was also talking about a lot about he bought a yacht and he was about to like tour the
Still doing it.
world.
He's still
Which
doing
yeah,
it.
which yeah, I like followed him on Instagram after that, and he's still doing it, yeah. And so
That'd be
we're
awkward.
at
He's like, hey, check out my Instagram, and you're like, and you go to his page, you're like, ooh, follow, like, like this big
yeah,
Spurs fan.
yeah. I don't follow all of them. I only follow the Hall of Famers. So no, but and so we're having dinner and it's really nice. And who walks in but Tony Parker? And it
I didn't
was
know this
like,
part of it.
yeah, it was completely out of nowhere. He wasn't invited. He was having dinner with his wife, like at a table right next to ours.
Wife number
And
6.
Tony, yeah, yeah, it was actually Eva. She was
Oh my god.
no. So he walks up to Boris. They say hi, and then they have like a 10-minute conversation in all French, like while
Oh,
we're just eating dinner there, and it was really cool.
she
And
like,
then
hey,
after,
hey Siri, open Google Translate.
yeah, I'm like taking notes. Um, and then afterwards, after the dinner, we went to my mom's friend's house, and Boris tagged along, and it was really cool. And so basically, what I'm saying is Boris Diaw and I, like, we're cool.
You be hooked up.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
very
I
tender.
can't,
He's very
I
gentle.
can't, I can't say that because TMZ will report it, but
Yeah.
yeah. And also, I mean, like 6 months later, I went to another place and he was there. So I've met Boris Diaw twice. We're basically best friends.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I've heard that story more times than I can count, probably. No, but actually, I didn't know Tony Parker showed up. I don't know if you ever heard that part. So I have a couple. My first one is like a super random one. It was Beno Udrich was doing Udrich, however you pronounce it. He was doing a sign in meet and greet autograph thing at Ingram Mall, and my dad was like, "You want to go meet Beno Udrich?" And I was like, "I guess." Like I was like, I'd probably rather go play basketball with my friends, but okay. And so we went to go meet Beno Udrich, and I wore a Manu Ginobili jersey, and and he like apparent for some reason I was the only one wearing a Spurs jersey there. And so I was like really young, but I was like, this is kind of disrespectful that I'm wearing another player's jersey asking him to sign my basketball. But and so he went up there. I went up there, he autographed my basketball, and he's like saying a few words to everyone that he talks to. He was like, "You're wearing the wrong jersey." And I was like, shit, he noticed. And then so not knowing what to say, I swear to God, this is what I said. I said, "Do they sell your jersey?"
Oh my God.
I didn't know what to say, and so I just panicked. I was
Was the
hoping he
answer
wouldn't.
no?
No, he said, "I hope so," or something like that. But yeah, I was like, "Oh, do they sell your jersey?" And that was hilarious. But so I have the Bano Udry one. I have Kawhi Leonard one. I'm sure you guys both know about this. I made it. I kind of like looked stupid looking back on it, but so where I was working, it's in a restaurant, and he came to the drive-through, and Kawhi, anyone who knows Kawhi, he's not gonna like be chatting it up with the window person in the drive-through. But I was like, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And he told me his excuse was so weird. He was like, "Nah, I just did an interview," and I was like, "What?" But I was like, "What?" I'm not gonna be like, "Well, so." And so I was just like, "Okay, cool, man. No problem, no problem." And so like I like go to get his food, and I bring it back to him. And by the way, he's in an old, like kind of beat up, but it looks like it's being worked on, like Bronco. It was the weird.
Tahoe?
Was it a Tahoe?
Bronco?
Yeah, I heard he drove like a '97 Tahoe forever.
That was it then. That was it. And so I was so locked into his eyes, I couldn't see what he's driving. But and so as he's driving off, he's got like a stack of his claw hats in his passenger seat. And like, I guess he was doing a giveaway or something. So he had like 10 of them there. He just drives around and gives hats to random people. But he felt bad for telling me no about a picture, and I was cool about it. And so as he was driving off, he's like, hey, here, and he hands me like one of the hats out of his passenger seat. And I was like, can I have all of them? I was just kidding. And so like, but then this one kid in the drive-thru tries to grab it, and I was like, absolutely not. He looked at me, and so I like took the hat from him. And I made a whole big deal out of it, and like we were, holding on everyone's food because I was taking pictures with the hat, and it was ridiculous. But that was really cool. I feel like not a lot of people have Kawhi Leonard stories, so that one is kind of means like, oh, do you really?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay, so also at my job at the time, I'm not sure how much you've shared about our job history, but I used to own a food truck, right? The food truck that you currently, I think, work for.
Yep.
And we were packing it. We used to serve it. They served it every Spurs game now. And we were packing up. Spurs game was over. We're getting ready to go. We're jumping in the truck. We're gonna drive away. And this beautiful black sedan comes into the area where like we serve the food, which is the court. If you're familiar with the AT&T Center, it's the Bud Light courtyard where they play music. They have some food trucks, a lot of seating, and a bar. And this black sedan pulls up to this other food truck, and Kawhi Leonard gets out. It's like after the game, right? Homeboy hasn't played in like 6 months, right? He's had an injury or whatever. And the person I'm working with, I was like, I said, like, that's Kawhi Leonard, like right in front of us. And she says, should I go ask her a picture? And I was like, I'm not going to, but you're welcome to. And she walked on over there and asked for a picture, and true to form, said that he was sick. And
like,
she didn't get the picture.
What are these weird excuses? Like, nah, it's Tuesday.
Yeah. And so she came back, and we left. And a week later, I talked to that same food truck owner about like why did he come to you? And apparently they had a relationship where like he had a certain diet that he had to follow, and like
my uncle says I gotta eat fish.
Yeah, exactly. And so he would text the food truck owner, who's the same food truck owner who I have the phone number of. Like Kawhi Leonard's texting him, asking him where he is, and apparently after Spurs games, is driving up there and getting food after not playing for us, and then eventually leaving like 6 months later.
Yeah. So
let me ask what your if I can.
Yeah.
What were your feelings when all of that went down?
Well, okay. Here, hold on. I definitely that's my very next thing. I have one more story, and I want to get to Kawhi because this next part of the podcast we're going to talk about when things started to change, and that's the perfect segue of when things changed. So my last story I did a Bruce Bowen. It was a defensive basketball camp. Of course, Bruce Bowen having a defense only basketball camp. But in the end, we had like a big tournament, and we scrimmaged, and it was on the half courts made up. There's 4 courts on like a full court or whatever. And then the final game would be played on the actual full court. And so my team made it to that. And I was like 10 years old. I played okay in the leading up games, but I was so nervous because the whole camp was watching you. Bruce Bowen's on the sideline watching us, and I miss every single shot I take. And then we go up to take a picture with, and we lose the game, of course. I'm like Dame. If I don't hit the shots, we're losing. You know what I'm saying? And so I go up to take a picture with Bruce Bowen afterwards, and he's there with like the trophies, and we're taking pictures. And he looks at me, and like I could tell he recognized me. He was like, "Tough shots, man." and then he just
that's him saying, "Stop taking shots over 3 people."
Yeah, and I was like, "Did you like my corner threes? I learned it from you, Bruce." And like I went like 0 for 9, and yeah, I was like, "Oh, he recognized." Like I think he noticed. Like all this went through my head in like a second. I thought he recognized like that I've been working my ass off the whole camp, And he's like, tough shots. And then he's like, smile. And then take the picture and then moved on. That was it. Yeah. Okay. So back to Kawhi. Let's talk about that because now we're going to get into where things started to change. So we have a couple of good years when Kawhi is still happy here, or as far as the public eye can tell. We get LaMarcus, and that's another guy we'll talk about, I'm sure. But Kawhi eventually gets hurt. Spurs mishandle his injuries. So Steven, I'm gonna flip it back to you. Do you buy that the injury mishandle was the main reason for him wanting to leave? Or do you think no matter what happened, if that injury had never happened in the Warriors series, he's going to LA no matter what?
So if he never gets hurt, we win another title. But I think no matter what, he's leaving. I think that the handling of the injury was almost an excuse for him to start that process early. But I think even if we win another title, even if he never gets injured, he seems like the kind of guy that just wants to be surrounded by family, wants to be at home. I think either way, he's finding his way back to LA. I just think that that injury was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was just the excuse to say, hey, you know what? Look what they're doing. They misdiagnosed me. They're trying to make me play hurt. I'm out. But I will tell you, the thing that bugs me is, he didn't realize who he was coming after. When you're when you're the star of a team who had a David Robinson, a Sean Elliott, a Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, someone who sat on the bench his whole career he could have started for any other team. And then you do something that makes it look like it's all about you, it's just magnified. And so for me, being used to that selfless Spur way really, really rubbed me the wrong way. I'm all for player empowerment. I'm all for, going where you want to go. But the way that it was handled and the way that he just dipped out from what it seemed like, man, I couldn't stand it.
Mm-hmm. Taylor, how do you feel with the whole thing?
Man, so I actually disagree. I think that, I think there's no injury. There's no injury in that Golden State game to Zaza pushing him. And that never happens. We'd go up 1-0 in that series, and we probably lose the series, but you never know. I think that he doesn't have the excuse to leave. I think that he was a little bit concerned with public perception, although I guess in hindsight, that doesn't really support that. Like what's happened doesn't really support that. No, I too was extremely hurt by what happened, but I think that if he wasn't injured, like none of it would have happened. And it was the definite turning point in the franchise. Like you even felt it at the time. Like as he wasn't playing, he's going to food trucks while not playing. Like you could feel that, okay, it's going to take a turn. And I remember thinking how could this happen to us? Right? Like it just did not seem like a thing that would happen to the Spurs. And ever since then, we've been what's a good team like Portland has been, right? Well, they're kind of in it, but no one really takes them seriously. Yeah. And I wasn't used to that feeling as a fan.
So what's different? I mean, he wins a championship in Toronto.
Exactly.
They're ready to sign him to the max. Still leaves.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, because that Toronto team was set up to win multiple championships, right? You got Siakam on the rise; he's only going to get better. Kyle Lowry has still a few years of good basketball. They have role players. Danny might not have left. They can win a couple championships.
My question is, what is it? I mean, so he's not going to be a top 30 player probably of all time, unless he wins a championship in LA, right?
And that's arguable.
No, it's close. I mean, it depends on. That all goes back to the whole thing of are we talking about players? Are we talking about winners? You know what I'm saying? Because that changes everything. You were talking about winning. Tim Duncan is a top 5 player easily, but if you're talking about players strictly, it's harder to, do that kind of thing. So, I mean, I think Kawhi as it stands, maybe gets one more ring and doesn't take some hard fall. Like, I think that he could be a top 20 player. I mean,
Really?
he was for such a long time, and he's dropped off defensively, but for such a long time, he was the best two-way player in the league, for a good like 4 or 5 years.
Did each of y'all watch the Kawhi buzzer beater a couple years ago?
I was watching it
The
live.
the,
Yeah.
the Embiid one.
Yeah, me too. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was watching. I was in a hotel room, and I like screamed, and I was with family, which was kind of awkward, but yeah, it was crazy.
I thought that was going to be until this season happened. I was really worried for Joel Embiid that was going to be like a career-defining moment. Was that happened? Yeah. He couldn't have done anything about it. It was an insane shot that happened to him, knocked him out. He went to like the hallway crying. I was like, oh no, like this is going to be Joel Embiid's thing, and if he doesn't do anything else, it might end up being his thing. But
now Kawhi is going to be a top 30 player in my opinion, hands down. I think he already is. For me, it's hard to root for him.
Mm-hmm.
Period. It's just hard for me to want to see him succeed. It's just my cousin and I go back and forth a lot. Man, do you want Kawhi to win? Do you want him to lose? It's just hard for me after the way it happened. I can't root for him.
Steven, do you remember watching the Kawhi's first comeback game against the Spurs after he left to Toronto?
And then DeMar fumbles it at the mid-court.
No. When Kawhi comes back.
Yeah, so the game when Kawhi comes back to San Antonio and DeMar DeRozan has his first career triple-double and, and is showing out. And me and Taylor were at that game. We had a crazy, like, sports weekend of going to, like, the Sugar Bowl, watching the Longhorns get the upset there, and then coming back, going straight to the stadium, I think, or actually dropping off bags. Yeah. And then going to the stadium to watch that game. And Kawhi is clearly trying to play to the crowd, right, and trying to shut us up. And it was like every time he got the ball for the first, like, 3 quarters, and basically the whole game, it was like the loudest booing you can imagine. And he's trying to play into it. He's missing everything. DeMar is like feeling it. DeMar gets his first career triple-double. It might still be his only to date. I have no idea. But that was an insane game. And that was one of the crazier experiences I've had in that stadium. But Taylor, do you have any like specific feelings about that game?
Man, all I remember about that game was the rush to get there in time. Like, again, you mentioned
God.
We were having a crazy weekend and we were running late. And I swear to God, if it wasn't for the Canadian national anthem, we would have been late.
Yeah.
But they had to do the other national anthem. So we got an extra 2.5, 3 minutes. We made it into our seats before lineups were announced, which is what we were waiting for, right?
That was the most important part.
Yeah, we wanted to see the video. We wanted to hear the reaction of the lineups. And we missed both national anthems. And luckily the Spurs, the AT&T Center, they do this like whole thing before they announce teams. And man, like that was all I remember.
You almost became like the first Karen. I remember the security guard told you it was like it was card only, and it was something like that. Like there was a reason you had to go back in. They were gonna make you go back in the line to pay by card, and you were about to freak the fuck out. And I was like,
oh yeah, no, we were in the parking line, yeah, and they're like, I only take cash, and I was like, well then she needs to come over here and take my payment because it's 8:05 and the game starts at 8. So let's figure this out together. Let's work together so that I get to watch what we all came here to see.
So, okay, so we can kind of go from here, and we're in this time now where, like I said, the Spurs are 29-29. That's how it's been for the past couple of years. DeMar's first year here, I think we won 48 or something around there, and it's clearly not the same. Let's talk right now. Where do you guys think we go from here? I've been of the mind of the last few years that this whole treading water thing doesn't make sense, but then it's hard to argue because what are we getting? Like Greg Popovich is not ready to retire. At least the past few years he hasn't been. And so like, you're not going to tank with the greatest coach of all time at the helm. Like you're just not. And so where do we go from here right now?
I am surprisingly optimistic. I love our young core. I think we have a few really, really good pieces. I love the athleticism, the length, the defense. DeJounte, I think, is a young star. He's been a little injured, but he's long. He's great on the defensive end. Lonnie Walker seems like a freak of an athlete, can jump through the roof. I love our young core, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're about to have some cap space over the next couple years to make a big signing. I think if I'm a free agent, I know people have mixed feelings about Pop wanting to retire. I think in the NBA, there are still athletes that want to play for Pop. I think playing for Pop, getting a big bag from San Antonio, and being surrounded by some good, young, athletic players, I could see us making a move in the next couple years.
Yeah. Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah. So my question to Steven is like, who's the player? I mean, like, who wants to come to San Antonio? Who wants to play for a team that doesn't have any experience anymore? And a coach that's on out.
Yeah.
So I look at the NBA now, and I think, you look at Giannis, just signed this big deal to stay in Milwaukee. I think Luka may be another one that is going to stay in Dallas. I think people are going back to being open to going to a smaller market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more than ever, legacy talks are out there. Where you stand in the all-time ranks, that's talked about more than ever, you versus who. And people want to win that championship. And I feel like we're going to, LaMarcus signed. And that was a surprising sign. I remember I was shocked when it came out that we were able to get him. I think there may be somebody that wants to come.
I think that I personally am ready, have been preparing for longer than I probably should have, probably since 2011, 2012, that the Spurs are ready for a rebuild. And, thanks to Pop and thanks to the big three, luckily we didn't have to deal with that until Kawhi left. But I think it's time. I mean, I think that every franchise goes through that sort of cycle. And, we went through it in 95 and 96. And maybe it is a 30-year, 25-year cycle for us. And I think it's just time to rebuild, mostly because it'd be nice if my kids were able to experience the same thing that I did when I grew up.
Do you have in mind a soft rebuild, or are you trying to go full, kind of like with the Mavericks? The Mavericks, we still don't know what this team's going to be, but the Mavericks are an example of, they had a few down years. They got Luka. All of a sudden, they're really competitive again. Yeah. So, are you looking for that, or are you looking at some crazy blow up?
I'm looking at Houston Astros 2010, 2011, right? 2012, whenever they just lost the most games of any team over a 3-year period ever, right? Let's go to the bottom and let's swim around in the bottom until we can find the right time and right players to help us rebuild. Now, we've been very fortunate with 2 back-to-back number 1 Hall of Famers, right?
Yeah.
Robinson and Duncan. And I don't know that there's a franchise that can say that. Maybe the Lakers, they've had a few number 1s that ended up pretty good. But I can't think of any other franchise that had multiple Hall of Fame number 1 picks.
Yeah. So to kind of go back, I get what you're saying, Steven, about people being okay with the small markets. I just don't know. I think that for that to happen to us, we're gonna have to find that guy through our own upbringing, like the draft. I don't know. I don't know if that guy exists where he's willing to come from another team in free agency and be like, this is my city now, because it has to be a guy who, Luka and Giannis, they came from overseas and they're new to this country, and all of a sudden the city adopts them, right? And they're fan favorites, and they've never received this type of love anywhere. And so that's why they're so bought in. is because their first experience in this country is this city just falling in love with them. And so I feel like, we got very fortunate with our big three in that Tim grew up on an island and Tony and Manu not being from here. And so they didn't know this country either. And we brought them in and that could have contributed, to why they stayed so long. So I'm just worried that Spurs Twitter is something I talk about a lot because I know, Steven, I know you're not a huge Twitter guy, but Spurs Twitter
Well.
runs wild with some of these takes. Like my favorite one was early in the year that Keldon Johnson may have a higher ceiling than Zion Williamson. That was a personal favorite. And I remember I had a field day with that one. And
Did he stand up?
and looking, yeah. And like obviously that was coming out of the bubble. Keldon looked good. Beginning of the year, Keldon looked a little better. And so everyone was just going crazy with like this Keldon Zion comparison. But stuff like that, I feel like Spurs Twitter is a little too optimistic that we're gonna find that Luka Giannis through free agency. And I just don't know if it's gonna happen.
No, I agree. And so let me rephrase. I think you can find a good number 2 or number 3 piece.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to get that centerpiece? No. But I can see us getting our second or third best player to come. I still trust in the Spurs drafting. I still trust in the way they develop. I think that we don't have to be in the top 5 to find that. I mean, you look where Manu was picked, where Tony was picked. I still think that our number 1 or 2 can be drafted or brought up within, but I believe that they have money to spend and that somebody will come, a good solid player, not the guy, but a good solid player.
140 million we have this offseason. Taylor, do you have anyone in mind who is available this offseason that you'd like to see come in?
Well, let's see. What's Klay Thompson's contract status?
I believe that he has one more season. So
including this one, because he's been out for a while.
I think he has one more after this season, if I'm not mistaken. If it like let me pitch this one to you guys. And I know this one is a popular opinion. I'm not breaking ground here. What are you guys' opinions on Lauri Markkanen, if you have one?
Rough. I mean, again, potential. I think that the ceiling is there. I think, it would be a definite fit for us. For me, I think DeJounte can be a point guard for a championship team. I'm not worried about the point guard position. But you're talking about a big man who is a stretch 4, who can shoot the ball, who's fairly athletic. I love Markkanen. I know there's a lot of hype on him. I'm curious to see what he looks like in a system that helps him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the hype is because this offseason is, with all the contract extensions, is one of the worst free agents off seasons in like half a decade. And so like Markkanen might be like the 5th best player in this off season. And so, I mean, if we can snag that guy, where I'm at right now with this off season is sign Markkanen to like a 4-year deal, right? And it's gonna be an offer sheet. So the Bulls, they're most likely gonna turn it down. The Bulls have benched him at this point. So sign him to like a semi-outrageous offer sheet. And don't spend any more crazy money on a 3 or 4 year contract. Get a couple of guys to fill out the roster 1 or 2 years, and let's hope over the next couple of years we develop some guys, and then in 2023 or something, a big name comes up and we still have that money to spend. I'm just really scared they're gonna try to stay afloat and get an overspend on 15, 20 mil on guys that don't belong in starting rotations, and waste all this money, and then we're not going to have another chance for 4 or 5 years.
So in 2022, you have Luka, Kawhi, James Harden, Durant,
Kawhi return?
Yeah, do you think Kawhi's available?
But somebody on that list is Bradley Beal. Again, would he come to San Antonio? I don't know. He's saying he wants to stay in DC with not a bright future, potentially.
Bullshit.
So I don't know. I could see us signing a good
year.
2 or 3.
Yeah. Let me pitch this to you guys. Let me pitch this and give it a chance. I thought of this on the way home today. Kyle Lowry, his contract ends this season. What do you guys think? Imagine this. We sign DeMar 2 years, and I don't know the numbers on this, so give me a break. DeMar and Lowry, 2 years. Markkanen, 4 years. And so we reunite Lowry and DeMar, and we get Markkanen for the long term. So Lowry and DeMar are just here to hold us over while we find our guys for the future, right? But that should be a playoff team. Everyone that we have now, the only thing I could see the counterpoint being is that Lowry, it's already the case is DeMar's holding back our young guys now. So now we're going to add in Lowry as well to do that even more so. But look, my lineup in my head is small ball, right? Go DJ, Lowry, DeMar, Keldon, and Markkanen. That sounds like fun at least. What do you guys think of that?
If you're trying to win a championship, absolutely not. I mean, I think my go-to is always.
But over the next 2 years, are we trying to win a championship?
Well, that'll sell tickets. I'd go see Lamar and I'd go see DeMar and Kyle play,
But isn't that the definition of staying in the middle?
No, so yeah.
That team's not a top 5 team in the West?
No, yeah. And so yeah, that your point stands is like that's not going to get us a draft pick, which is what we need to get the Giannis Luka. I would just hope that we could have that stay competitive, and we need more competitive, I think, than we have been the past few years. Because what really sucks to me is being 9-10. I think that can make us 6-7 around that range, but then at that point, you're right. You're not going to get a draft pick. You're just hoping that all of a sudden Lonnie Walker becomes Luka Doncic, which is not going to happen to the sadness of Spurs Twitter. But other than that, it's really hard. I think Pop's going to retire this season. I really do. I think Becky comes in, hopefully.
Time.
Yeah, and I'm going to be really upset if Pop stays, to be honest with you, because it's every season it's more and more likely someone's going to take Becky off our hands and make her their head coach. And it's going to be really upsetting because I feel like a big market team could be the first one to hire a female coach as like a marketing scheme when she belongs here in San Antonio as our next head coach. Pop has been teaching her everything. I firmly believe Tim stepped down because he didn't want to have to worry. He didn't want to be a conversation of who's our next head coach, Tim Duncan or Becky, right? It should be Becky Hammond. So I hope Pop steps down. Becky takes over, kind of changes the play style. And, we can get guys like Markkanen who don't just shoot mid-range twos. And, we can move on to the next phase of basketball.
Okay, so clearly Kyle is sold on Markkanen.
Yes, absolutely.
Because he's mentioned him about 8 times.
Yes.
Lost count. I have a tally here, but I ran out of room. I think Becky, she breathes, lives and breathes Spurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've grown her to be this coach. It's very Spurs organization-esque to have her it's very Spurs for them to be the first team to have a female coach.
It would be authentic.
It would be. It just feels just like something that this city would do, and something that is part of Pop's legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pop was this amazing coach, very vocal in politics, very, very liberal for what it's worth, and to lead into the first female head coach in the NBA would be remarkable for, I think, everything. And so I don't see a world without Becky Hammond being the Spurs coach. And so I agree with you that he should retire this year.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start that journey now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, do you guys have any other thoughts about where we should go from here? We'll probably just get all in the open.
No, I hope they don't spend money just to spend money.
Yeah.
I can't stand when teams throw money at players that don't deserve it, sign bad contracts that aren't tradable. And so I'm okay with them spending some of that money, but I don't see the Spurs. I hope I don't see the Spurs just throwing money at the wrong players, put us even more of a hole.
Well, so clearly my pessimism towards the Spurs' future has come out in this. So I don't want to end on a somber note. So I glossed over this. Taylor sent me a text reminding me. So let's end on a happier note. Do you guys have any time throughout the Spurs dynasty? Do you have a favorite game that you've been to, Taylor? Taylor, I know what yours is, and yours is mine too.
Yeah, so I have three, and I have an honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like a list here.
Yeah, go for it. List them all out.
So my third favorite was I was fortunate enough to go to the game 2 of the 2014 finals. And the only reason I put it on the list because the Spurs ended up losing that game, and it was the only game they lost in that series.
Yeah.
Of course, was because the atmosphere at a game during the finals is insane, right? You could feel it. You could feel it like pulling into the parking lot. It's a completely different feel. Everyone is completely hyped. You feel it from the day you wake up, like the moment you wake up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you make it all the way there, and that's the reason I put it in this list, even though they ended up losing. And it was a close game, and I remember leaving the building thinking, well, at least it's going to be a good series. And then the Spurs never lost after that. So I put it on the list. The second favorite is, and Kyle, you were there. Yeah, you were there. Manu's retirement night. Sellout crowd. So much fun. You and I had the benefit of being there 2 hours before fans were allowed to arrive.
Yeah.
We were there and we took pictures with the trophies. We walked around the building. We got shirts. It was a great, great time. And like the buzz in the building, obviously the ceremony where you got everyone to speak. You and I got to watch it live. Those, of course, I'm sure, Stephen, you watched that one. That was an amazing day. You could feel it in the city. It was like Manu Day.
Yeah, let's not pretend like Manu's retirement ceremony wasn't 10 times the deal of Tony's, right? Like
yes.
Tony's was cool, but we lost that game when Tony had his, and it was like, weren't you on the Hornets like a month ago?
Yeah. I remember I was at that game too, and I was at a lot of games, and and it was like the end of the game, and it was like, should we go home now? Like I remember comparing it to Manu's, it was like Tony's wasn't as big of a deal. No. And my number one is actually a regular season game, and again I was there with Kyle. It was the 2016 season.
Was this the one we had our first kiss?
Yeah, actually it was, right? Like, I'm glad you remember that. I was going to bring that up, but since you mentioned it, let's talk about that only. No, it was Golden State at San Antonio. And this is the season where Golden State ends up setting the record for wins in a season. And meanwhile, the Spurs are undefeated at home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's February, March-ish. No, it's January. It's early January. And again, the Spurs are undefeated at the time. Everyone realizes that the Warriors are on this run to set this record, the 96 Bulls record. And Kyle and I are fortunate enough to go to the game, and it was the most fun I've ever had at a game.
Box seats, by the way, which was my first and only experience being in a box, and it was right at half court in a box. It was like catered, and those are the coolest seats. And that game was huge. Curry, I looked it up to get the exact stat. Curry went 1 for 12 from 3 in the middle of like his insane run where he was playing like he's playing right now, by the way. But Curry goes 1 for 12 from 3. Kawhi gets like this huge block towards the end of the game on Curry to seal it. And Kawhi, they were like switching on Curry, locking him down. No one could get anything off. And that game felt like a finals game. It was insane. So that's also mine. That's my favorite as well.
And the Spurs ended up going 40-1 that season at home, finishing second in the league, second in the West, obviously, behind the Warriors. But there was a moment within like 2 weeks of the season ending where it wasn't the Warriors hadn't even clinched it yet, and the Spurs could still outpace them and go 41 at home. but they ended up the only loss of the season was to the Warriors, the game that you and I weren't at. So maybe that was a problem. And yeah, God, that game just rings in my head like probably once a week, I think.
Steven, what's yours?
Man, to be honest, I've never been to some big games. I think I've been to 2 playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
Both times they lost. They were, first round or something like that.
Don't do me a favor. Don't go to like a playing game or anything.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've had opportunities to go, and if y'all know me, I'm really superstitious, so I stay away. But I was fortunate enough to go to the last game Kobe played against us, and I remember San Antonio doing this really cool farewell to him. And for me, it's not very Spursy, but you hate this. It's like a love, hate, respect thing that you have for somebody for so long.
Oh yeah.
And then to see it kind of coming to an end and just kind of being able to see, the way Pop and all the Spurs were just kind of bidding him farewell. That was a really cool game to be to. So I would probably say that one.
Is it just me, or as Spurs fans, do we have there's this respect in retrospect for every team that we're always battling? So there's the Grizzlies. Like, I respect the hell out of Marc Gasol, Randolph, Conley, and then I respect the hell out of Kobe and those Lakers teams. I respect the hell out of those Nuggets, the Suns teams, all those teams that we had to get through. But the Rockets are different, right? There's no respect for those Rockets teams. If y'all are anything like me, like I like watching James Harden play basketball, but it's not the same. Like, I feel like when James Harden retires, I'm not gonna be like, remember those great those battles with the Rockets? I'm gonna be like, fuck the Rockets. And
now for me, it goes back when T-Mac scored 8 points in 9 seconds.
It was 13. It was 13 points in 30 seconds.
It was like this. Okay, I instantly hate y'all.
Yeah,
I mean, instantly.
Yeah, Yao Ming was always beating up on Tim and taking up all Tim's energy, and he didn't play the same for 2 weeks after that. Yeah, those
I know you. I don't know if you've said yours yet, but did we favorite Spur all time?
I don't even think I had that written down. Go for it. Favorite Spur all time? I think we did the lesser known, but favorite Spur of all time? Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, mine's got to be Manu. I mean, just his energy, his charisma, his personality, the way he was willing to come off the bench and just play his role. I mean, not even just Spur. I'm talking top 5 favorite players ever. Not the best, but top 5 favorite ever. Manu's up there for me.
Yeah. It's the same for me. I mean, my dad once told me you're not a Turk if Manu is not your favorite player, and awesome. Ever since then, I mean, what am I gonna do? Disagree with that?
Yeah, Manu, I agree. I remember when I first became a fan, I had all these hand drawings. They were terrible, by the way, of the Spurs players, and I hung them up in my room, and I spelled it. He was the first one I did because he's my favorite player, and it was it was the way that Charles Barkley pronounces it. It was Ginobili with the E with the 2 E's instead of the I's. But yeah, I mean, Manu that's everyone. I'm sure if you ask 10 people, 8 or 9 of them say Manu. When Tim is obviously the way vastly greater player when it's all said and done. But when they did that starting lineup introduction, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, when they said Manu Ginobili, that place erupted different. It was not the same. And yeah, you go to Walmart where they have the knockoff Spurs jerseys. There's 40 Manu ones and 10 Tony and Tim ones. And being a EuroLeague guy, or sorry, in the being Argentinian, it was that also played into it because Spurs fans love international players. It's so abundantly obvious. So that played into it too. But
let me give you a quick what if. So 97, 98, Sean Elliott's hurt. The year before he was healthy, he actually made an all-star team. We lose to Utah, who eventually play MJ in the finals. Tim is first team All-NBA, first team All-Rookie. The next year, MJ retires. We make it to the finals, and who do we play? The 8th seed, Knicks, in the finals. Imagine MJ stays for one more year, and we have a Bulls-Spurs matchup, that would have been MJ's toughest out. And can you imagine if Tim beats him, wins Finals MVP?
And they would have, because
they would have.
the Spurs were a much better team.
Well, but the
Yeah.
Bulls were also done. Like
Yeah.
they were not gonna win another one.
Yeah, they spent everything they had on
Yeah.
that series, and they would have won that series. But it's also scary to think about, because like the whole thing is that we didn't. I feel like that would, if we would have lost that, it's another thing for the non-Spurs believers to go back on, that like we couldn't win that series. But
It was also a lockout year.
yeah,
99 was, so it was kind of weird.
yeah. Well, guys, y'all have anything else? Oh, you know what I was gonna say? Favorite player. This one's so random, but because I was always like kind of a contrarian when we talk about favorite players. I like to
Fabricio?
I like to. Oh my god, that was okay. He's so close. It's a two-way tie between these two guys. It's the guy that Fabricio played next to most often.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Number 16, 2007.
No, nope.
Francisco Elson.
What the hell?
So okay, do you guys not have fond memories of Francisco Elson? I love.
I don't have memories of him.
Watching him play so much. I remember this one specific play in the 2007 finals where it's a fast break, and we're just beating the shit out of the Cavs, because why not, right? We're gonna sweep the hell out of the kids. And Tony Parker's on the fast break, skip pass to Francisco Elson. He dunks it. We're in Cleveland. He dunks it. He comes down and he does like this like Superman thing, and in front of the Cleveland crowd. I don't know why. I love Francisco Elson.
I just remember being so pissed after David left, because we were riddled with these sorry centers. Nazir Muhammad, Rashan Nesterovic. I remember being so angry year after year at whoever was playing center for the Spurs for the longest time.
Yeah, Rasho was all. It felt like he was there forever, and he was there for like 3 years. But those seasons after 2003, yeah, he was just like, get him out of the way.
And then
I gotta tell you, I gotta get it off my chest. You know, we think about these great franchises, these great coaches. Belichick gets a ton of credit. Nick Saban gets a bunch of credit. I mean, when you put Coach K, when you put on paper what the Spurs have done and the level of greatness they've been able to sustain for so long, it is unreal. And, you know, they're just the epitome of what a great organization is. A lot of leadership you can take for them, but they've just been great for so long. And sometimes I wish they did get a little bit more credit for everything they've been able to do.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because you'll see like Sports Center graphics about talking about great teams like historically, and the Spurs won't be the point. They'll be talking about another team, but right there, right below or right above that team, there's the Spurs, right? Or Greg Popovich or whoever, right? The Spurs are right there in the conversation, but they're never the conversation, right? And I agree with that a lot.
Yeah, I really hope that these last couple of years in Pop's career don't. I hope no one. So to say it bluntly, I hope no one remembers this, because like it's not gonna happen. It's.
Me too, actually.
I don't want
count me in for that.
I don't want this to stain his career. He had so many good years from he came from the film guy, right? He was a film assistant to being arguably the greatest coach in basketball, even arguably the greatest coach in sports, in American sports. And so, look, man, when you start coaching that early and the game of basketball literally completely shifts to another side of the court, right? It was a paint game. It was 2 7-footers, and now it's not a paint game anymore. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And so I hope that this doesn't stain his career, and I hope that he's still remembered as this great coach and not this guy who couldn't adapt to a 3-point shot. But guys, that's all I have. Do you guys have anything else to close up, or we all get out in the open? Just come on here and cry about memories from 12 years ago.
Yeah, man, this is great. I mean, right? I was taking notes earlier today, thinking about stuff, talking out loud, talking to other people. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It was fun. Yeah, I mean, and we kind of skipped over the place, so this is by no means a fundamentally sound podcast. Halfway through, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna start bringing up whatever. And so, but this is gonna be one that look, you gotta listen. You gotta live in San Antonio. You gotta be a Spurs fan to listen to this. Because if you're some random 76ers fan, you don't give a shit about any of this. But yeah, guys, had a lot of fun. Remember to review, rate, subscribe to the podcast. Helps out a ton. All right, guys, thanks for listening.